how's that looking? That needs garlic. Won't you please excuse me for a second? God almighty. This is why I like my quiet exhaust. There we go, that's finished. Right, let's turn the key. Okay, these are the bits we're going to sort out for the back axles. So we've got both the hubs here. What I'm going to do with these is open this up and then change the wheel bearing inside in both of them, because that's been on there 20 years. And as we're doing this, as it's all apart, we might as well get this absolutely as good as we can. Also, we've got the rear brakes here. These are new for the last MOT. They've just got a bit of surface rust on because they haven't been used, but there's no lip. We've got new pads in there. What I'm going to do is change the brake line, and I'm going to change this piece of pipe as well. I've got the two new brake lines here and the pipes to go in there, so we're going to get that sorted out. And also here, this is the xenon headlight leveler. Now these are pretty hard to find, so what I'm going to do is basically undo it very carefully, clean up all the metal, and then put it back on the car. Obviously we're going to we'll spray it with satin paint and make it look nice, and obviously check it's still working. So that's the jobs I'm going to crack on with now. So I'm also going to recondition these tie bars, or trailing arms, whatever they're called. It's mostly cosmetic on these, just a bit of surface rust, and I need to just sort out where I had to cut off the old bolts, so that can be sorted fairly easily. Then we'll get those satin black. The only real thing I need to do with them is change these bushes, so I've got two new ones coming down. We'll get those pressed out, and then we'll get this fully reconditioned and back on the car. Right, it's time to change this brake hose for the nice new one we got there, and also I'll be changing this pipe as well. I'm also going to shine up this hanger and spray that satin black. So let's get this disconnected. All of this was new for the last MOT, so this will go back on the car. I'm going to see if I can remove that rust there. All of this rust will come off the first time I put the brakes back on. Okay, then we're going to separate the brake hose from the brake lines, so fairly straightforward. Put the spanner on the back just to grip it. And we'll just undo this nut here. Be free, my friend. There we go. So that's the old one, and then this is the one we're going to replace it with. Now we need to pull out this clip, and then we can free off the hose, and then we can take this away and refurbish that. I need more grip. Need more power. Cool, bit too much power. Okay, that's good. There we go. Then we could just withdraw the hose. So this can now be reconditioned. Let's let it go with the wire wheel. I'm going to rust treat this and I'll paint this satin black. I'm going to refurbish the other one at the same time. So these have to go on in a certain direction. So just to make my life easy, put a piece of cotton around this caliper, a little piece of cotton around this, so I know that this bracket ends up on this caliper. Get the new brake lines back on the caliper. That's the bracket all spray. Let's get this back together. Now what we're going to do is take a look at the rust around the edge of the disc. I'm going to clean the edge of the disc up now. You see where the weather's got to this, it's not looking very nice, so that's going to be cleaned off with some sandpaper, and then I'm going to spray it with the same stuff that I did the exhaust with, the high temperature paint. Obviously these can get red hot, so nothing on here, and I'm going to stay well clear of the edge of that. Pull out the disc. And we're just going to very carefully go around the edges and on any bits that are rusty. We're not going to go anywhere near that. Clean it up with some brake cleaner. And tape over the friction surface with some masking tape. And 3 coats of very high temperature paint, 5 minutes apart. Cure the paint. How's that looking? That needs garlic. ready to serve. Okay, let's make a start reconditioning the rear hub. So basically nothing wrong with this at all, it's just that it's been in there for 20 years. The bearing's been in there for 20 years and it's basically preventative maintenance while it's all apart. We're going to take this apart, take it all to pieces and then change the bearing, and then we can renew the seal here. We can also check everything, clean everything, and just generally pretty it up so that it's going to suit the fully restored back of the car. Right, so we're going to take this apart and change the bearing. The bearing inside here is non-adjustable, so first what we've got to do is take off the dust cover. Let's get the big hammer. These come in new caps anyway, so it don't matter. It don't matter. Make a little dent and then we hit it this way. Alright, so we had to get serious now, so we've got the wood chisel. This won't be chiseling wood anytime soon, but there we go. There it goes. Lovely. So that's the cap, and what we're going to do now is take out this hub nut, and they say that you can reuse these up to 4 times, but all the kits I can see come with a new hub nut. That seems to be a 30mm. Actually, it's probably a 29, but we'll get away with that. I haven't got a 29. Okay, you're going to want to do this while it is on the car because you actually need to hold that bit there and it's sort of moving while I'm doing this. But let's see if we can get it off. Actually, let's try a bit closer. Or you need a really good vice. Again, I ain't got no vice. Should be possible to do this, I'm sure. Anything's possible if you swear long enough. Let's get my weight on it. Hold on people, I've had an idea. What I'm going to do is secure this bit with 2 bolts down there through the side of a railway sleeper, and then that will give me the same effect as it being on the car. Then I can put some force on that. Let's see what happens. Fortunately, I always carry a spare one of these around with me at all times for just such an occasion. So we're about getting around problems here at ST170 Restoration. Good. Let's do it. Let's get the breaker bar. Breaker. See you later. Let's try it from this angle. Okay, there we go. That's how you get around that. Perfect. There is always a solution somewhere. Yeah, that calls for a cup of tea. Okay, there we go. That's the wheel bearing inside there. So we sometimes can need a bearing puller to separate these, but by the look of it, this one is going to be okay. So we just pull this off, like so. There we go, that's the stub axle there, and then we've got the wheel bearing inside there. We're obviously going to take this out and then we're going to change this seal at the back as well. We're going to remove and replace the ABS sensor ring. So just pry it off. Then we need to get a pair of circlip pliers on here to squeeze those together, then we can withdraw the bearing. Right, so just having a closer look at these stub axles here, and I don't know whether you can see this gasket on the back here is quite perished. Seems to have sort of suffered from corrosion, water's got behind it, the metal has expanded, and it's damaged the gasket bit there. So I was having a look around, and I need to obviously replace this. Can't seem to find the gaskets, so I thought, well, I'll do the whole stub axle. Can't seem to find that because they're different for disc brake cars. So what I'm going to do is actually get stub axles for cars with drum brakes, and then I'm going to take off the gasket and hopefully replace that. So I'm hoping that's going to work, and we'll see what happens. So it's several days later and I'm still hunting for this tiny little gasket here on the stub axle. It's really not that bad. Won't you please excuse me for a second? So with the xenon headlight lever, there is no way if I start taking this apart it's going to go back together and I'm going to end up breaking it. So I know that it is actually working at the moment, but if you look at it, all of these little bolts and things are so small, I'm going to need like a sort of model maker's socket set or something to take all this apart. So the plan is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to take off as much of the surface rust as possible, very, very gently, and I'm going to coat it with the Hammerite rust killer, which will turn it black. Other than that, I'm going to leave it well alone, put it back on the car, and that should work perfectly. So I want to be careful when I'm pushing down on this not to knacker this joint. God almighty. This is why I like my quiet exhaust. This has turned out beautifully. All the metal's still very good, so I'm going to get the Hammerite rust killer on it and then it's ready to go. So I've got to use the jumbo brush. My other little delicate brush, I forgot to wash it and it got ruined. All done and looking much better. Let's go and get this back on the subframe. Alright, just got the parcel from the mystery shop. I know we've got the coil springs. So let's have a look at these. There we go, so these are the best quality ones I could find. There are some stuff that's a lot cheaper. They come with, you know, sort of come in different packs, but these are the best ones I could find. Seem to be a fairly well-known brand. So we've got a bit of a condition difference with these. You can see these were certainly ready to be changed. So the Monroe shocks have turned up. Okay. Nice. Right, it's time to get these pressed out. I've decided to buy a special kit rather than take it to a garage, so this kit was about 50 quid. So let's give it a go and see what we can do. Right, let's give this a go. Oh yeah, there we go. Easy as that. So over the last couple of days I have actually soaked this in WD-40 to get it in between there. But yeah, that's coming out much more easy than I was expecting. Oh yeah, there we go. Piece of piss. There it is. There we go, old versus new. So you can see that these have properly had it there, and then we've got the new parts here, properly branded. So the reason that I always go for buying components individually rather than going for a whole kit when I'm doing a big job is that I like to individually check out each brand that I'm using and make sure that it's good quality, whereas if I get a pack with loads of parts in, they're all non-branded stuff and I can't check the quality. Let's get these refurbished. So usual thing, I'm going to run over it with a wire wheel, treat the rust, prime it, paint it satin black, and then we'll get it back on the motor. And these are genuine parts as well. Drill out the old bolts. Take all the rusty bits off with the wire wheel. Give it a clean with some brake cleaner. Now for the rust treatment. Goodbye, Mr. Towel. Bit of primer. Get the satin black on. Let's get these back together. These are all the parts for the back suspension, so I've gone with the best quality gear I could find. These are really good brands, and I've got new bolts for them as well, new shock absorbers. I don't think I need to prime these, but I'm going to prime these anyway just to be sure. And obviously you saw that these have been reconditioned. So what we're going to do is go over to the car now and put all this back on it. Right, how are we going to do this? I'm going to go around, put all the bits back on and just do the nuts and bolts up finger tight. I'm not going to put the coil springs back in, but we're going to make a little template so that I can set the car to the design height. And then after that, I'm going to put the coil springs back in, do everything up, and then we can lower it to the ground, and that's the back suspension set up. Prime the shocks. I don't think you have to, but I'm just going to do this. So push this in and out and let it sort of rise 5 times, and that'll be primed. That's just rising back up there. It's only when they're stored they lay on their side and oil is in the wrong place. Okay, righting facing forwards. So we've got some resistance there because the lock thread is just hitting the thread, which is normal. That's enough, it's still moving freely, it's just enough to hold it all together. The bolt is nearly there, so we'll set it all up, get the design height set, and then we can torque this to the proper spec. Here we've got the anti-roll bar, or anti-roll bar bruv, as they say here in North Essex. Got these new things here, these need to go in a certain direction, so we've got to pay attention to where that's facing. These have to go over the anti-roll bar, and then we bolt it back on with these. Right, how you get these on is you make sure that's in the right place so that when it goes over there it's going to be facing the right direction. It's got a cut in it, so what we do there is we just try and put it in there through the cut. It's a bit fiddly to do this. So that just goes on. And they say you can't use any lubricant with this, you can use a bit of water, but that's it. Oh, enjoy your fly. There we go. Yeah, so when you do this, this has obviously been reconditioned. If it's covered in rust, I reckon you'd have a problem getting this on, so best to make sure the anti-roll bar is as clean as possible. Lovely jubbly. That's it. Just push the brackets over the top. Probably won't go on all the way, but that's enough so that we can get the bolts in there. Bollocks. So we just do this up bit by bit on each bolt just so that the bracket settles properly. So got to be really careful not to break this headlight leveler. God dear, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? These ones can be torqued now to 48 Newton meters. So this is the upper arm, or control blade as Ford likes to call it. I think control blade's pretty cool. Rear lower arms. Just watch the headlight leveler there. So with the xenon light leveler, the original alarm had a captive nut in here so that I could push that back up there and then put a bolt through it. This one hasn't got it, so I've got a nut and a bolt. I'm just going to put a bolt on the other side of that, and that will get around that problem. And I'll put a tiny bit of thread locker on that as well before I put that in there. Okay, spot the mistake. So when you put the arms on, you have to make sure that the anti-roll bar is sitting below the arms. So I had them on the top there, so I'm just going to correct that. That's better. Ooh. Sorry. fit the shocks. Put the top on, put the nut on. When we torque all these up properly, this one here we're going to hold it, because as we do it up, the inside spins there, so we need to hold the top of that and then do that nut up. I just noticed as well I've got the bloody wheel alignment bolts on the wrong way around, so I'm going to change those round, and then when we're all done we can have the tracking set without any issues. Right, what I'm going to do now is set the design height for the rear suspension. So basically what I need to do is make a template to set dimensions, piece of wood from the lower arm to the top there, and then I'm going to raise the arm here so that the piece of wood is in there, and that will set the design height. So the manual is telling me a couple of different things. I'm not entirely sure what it's saying, and basically it seems to be sometimes the spring is in, sometimes it's not, sometimes you have to take the anti-roll bar bush out. Not entirely sure, so I'm going to do it the way that I think, and obviously if there's an easy way, do let me know in the comments, but this is the way that I think I'm going to do it. So I'm going to remove the anti-roll bar mount, I'm going to take this nut out, and then I'm going to drop this arm down, then I'll put the spring back in, put this back in, do this all back up again, then put my spacer in there, and then I'm going to put the jack underneath this arm and raise it up until that spacer is held securely. Then what I'll do is do all of the suspension nuts on this side to the right torque. Okay, we're just taking a look at the measurements for the spacers. So this manual is for just a regular Focus. They don't actually have one for an ST170. However, I am going to use these measurements because they won't be too far out and they're the only ones I can get my hands on. So for the Estates, we have 157mm tall by 20mm wide, but obviously we're the hatchback, so we're going to make one 130mm tall by 20mm wide. And then it goes here, so it sits in between the lower arm and the top there, and then we jack it up, and that sets the design height. I'm going to do mine with a spring in because this manual is telling me to do it a couple of different ways. Not entirely sure which way, but what I'm going to do is put my spring in and then, as I said, torque it all up and we'll see what happens. So I've got the jack there, I've just put the spring in and then raised the arm, and then this bolt is now back in there. So I'm going to do the other side at the same time, and then we're going to reconnect the anti-roll bar. Anti-roll bar's reconnected. Let's go get the spacer. That's the spacer, 113 long by 20 wide. Okay, so what have we discovered? Basically, if you leave the coil spring in, when you try and jack it up to get that spacer in, it doesn't compress enough and it will lift the car off the ground, and you do need to take out that spring. So what I'm going to do now is take out the springs again, and then I'm going to put that little template in. Then what I'm going to do is undo that arm again and then put the spring back in, and I think that's what the book was trying to tell me, so that's how I'm going to do it. My goodness me, what a lot of arsing around this is. So basically I'm just trying to raise the lower arm there in order to get this piece of wood underneath, and there's actually still a fairly big gap, and what is happening is as I raise this arm, the car is lifting off the axle stands there, so I'm obviously not going to go anywhere near the underneath of the car while it's doing that, because it could very easily fall. It is sort of off the other one as well, so I'll stay well clear of that. I think what's happening is where I put the bush in the back of the arm here, I think that's slightly out of alignment, and what I'm going to try and do is put a little bit of WD-40 just around here, just around the edge, and then as the car sits here, as the weight is sitting on that arm, I'm hoping that will slowly move its way around so that this gap here will close a bit, and then we can get the spacer in. So I'll give that a go. I really want to try and avoid taking the whole arm out. Can't work it out. So not entirely sure why my spacer is not fitting in there. So the plan is put it all back together, put the coil springs back in, leave everything nice and loose, and then put the hubs back on, put the wheels back on, lower the car to the ground, and then sort of let it settle, let it kind of find its right level. Then we'll have another go at this once we've sorted out some of the stuff on the front. So I could easily edit this out, but I know you guys you want to see all the real life stuff and the real life problems that you know, everybody runs into. So yeah, that's the plan. Put it back together, drop it down, we'll do a bit on the front, and take another look at the back, see if it settles. Right, let's carry on with this wheel bearing replacement. So the problem I was having last time is I just can't find this seal anywhere. So as far as I can tell, this isn't available anywhere. I tried ordering some for Land Rovers and things, and none of them fitted, so I can't find those at the moment. And also I'd like to change this water seal as well. You're supposed to change that every time you do the bearings. Can't find these either. So the plan is I'm going to put it back together with the new bearing, which I've got here as it is, which will be perfectly serviceable. I mean, this is being really picky. I would like to get it done because I would like the whole thing completely refreshed. However, I'm not going to drive this car in the rain, so it probably won't matter that much. As I say, I'm going to put it back together, and then just bear in mind that that will need changing at some point, and as and when I can find the pieces, I will take it back off again, probably change the bearing again, and do it when I can find the bits. Give it a spray, and then remove the water seal carrier. Take out the circlip. Then I've got to turn this upside down and press this bearing out this way. So I did actually order a wheel bearing removal set here, but it's for a bloody lorry or something. All the sizes are far too big. So what we're going to do, I'm not going to order another one. I'm going to get this done sort of the old school way. So I'm going to use a socket that just fits on the top there. And then I'm going to get a rubber, well, put this in, get a rubber mallet, and then hit the top of that with a piece of wood over, and that will then drive the bearing out this way. Obviously I'll have to stand this on something. Alright, enough arsing around. I'm going to take this down to the garage and use their bearing press and get the work moved on a bit. So I'm literally going to have this bearing changed. Then we can get these back on the motor. Back from the garage with the wheel bearings all pressed in there. Let's get them back together. Right, let's get these back together. So first thing, put the circlip on. I'm going to put the safety glasses on because if that pings off and gets you in the balls, you'll really know about it. Eyeballs, that is. Squeeze that together. There we go. Then we put the water seal carrier back on. Give it a little tap down. Then put the ABS sensor ring back on. Just make sure it's properly seated. Then put it back on the stub axle. Then put the nut on. I'll do the same with the other one, then I'm going to put both of these back on the car and we can get this tightened up properly. Thread the ABS wire through. Bolts back in. Torque it a spec, 66 Newton meters, or you could leave it loose, makes the drive more exciting. Put the wheel back on so I can spin it while I'm doing the hub nuts up. I've got the leaflet that came with it, 110 Newton meters plus 60 degrees. The book says 235. I'm going to run with 110 Newton meters plus 60 degrees. This can always be adjusted. I'm going to rotate the wheel in the opposite direction while I'm tightening. Needs a bloody powder coat this wheel, look at the state of it. 110, then plus 60 degrees. Yeah, that's about it. Put this back under the car. There we go. Then just tap the cover back on. This is the near side one going on. So when I do the seals on the back here, I will actually paint all of this in the high temperature paint or a suitable paint just so everything looks perfect, but I'm not going to do that until the seals are properly sorted. Let's get the brakes back on. Don't want to touch him now to make him messy. Brake caliper bracket bolt, 55 Newton meters. That's it. So I'm going to take out this bolt here and then hook this bracket just over the edge there where it was, and then the new copper brake pipe will poke up there inside that bracket, and then I'll be able to connect the rubber brake hose to that, and that will be the rear hydraulics reconnected. All that arsing around putting this bastard back in. I might need a jack for this. Nope, just muscle is enough. Yeah, bloody lesson is repeated until the lesson is learned. If you're struggling with something, just get the jack. Messing with this for 5 minutes, just go and get the jack. Let's bring out the big guns. These are bloody good, these drivers. Just do this up manually. It's still moving nice and easily. It's not cross-threaded, so I'm happy with that. It's got to line up the brake line, so you've got 2 little notches in there. That should fit into there. It's giving me a bit of resistance, so what I'm going to do is move this one around another couple of notches so it sits completely fine. It shouldn't be twisted or anything. So we've got that in there. Then we'll put the bracket on behind it, and then we'll connect up the copper brake line. So that's the brake line freed off. So I'm going to do the bottom one first, because you see there's 2 notches there. There's only 2 notches in this bracket, so that goes in there first. Just need to make sure the brake line's nice and sort of unkinked. And then we've got the same 2 notches up in this one, but you see that's more like a, I suppose, a sort of star shape. There's many more notches there, so we can actually get the brake line just resting in there properly without being sort of kinked or stretched. So I'll put the kit back on that, and then I'll do up these nuts here for the copper brake lines, and that's the brakes done. Right, so the hydraulics all back on, so the pipes are all on there, the clips are on, everything's been tightened up, follow it through, it's all secure. What I'm doing now is just putting all the bits back onto the arms, so I had to rewatch my old videos to work out where they go. So we've got these 2 pieces here, and the ABS cable goes there, so it sits behind it. I'll show you that from the back. So you've got the handbrake cable goes through here, then you've got the ABS cable goes through that. You can bend these back. That follows through to the ABS connection, and then on the back here we're going to reconnect the handbrake. So that's the other end of the handbrake cable, so I'm just going to pull that out and then hook it back over this bit here, like so. And that's the rear brake sorted. Now we've got to bleed them. And also, before I forget, we'll put the bump stops back on. Right, I'm going to use a pressure bleeder for this and .4 brake fluid, so I want to make sure the backs are all bled and working fine, because when I do the front brakes I want to know that the backs are already working and I won't be chasing problems around. And particularly as the car has been sort of stood up here for 3 or 4 months with the backs undone, I want to make sure nothing's happened to that ABS pump, no air's got in, and basically everything's working fine, and then I can change the brakes on the front. Right, start with the caliper that's furthest away, so take off the dust cover. And then we've got a bit of manky old fuel hose that we'll put over the top there, as long as it's a nice secure fit. We're going to leave this done up for the minute. Put the end in the milk bottle, then we go and charge up the bleeder, and then when it's pressurised we'll just undo this and bleed the brakes. Fill the bleeder with .4, so it comes just below the gauge. Clean the top and then take the top out. The fluid's very low in here, so I'm going to just top it up so it's on the max. Screw the cap on. Attach the pressure bleeder hose. Then bring the pressure up to 10 psi. Or thereabouts. And then undo the bleed nipple. And then we're looking for no air bubbles and just nice clean brake fluid coming out there. So that is running out. I'm going to actually let this run and probably do more than I should just to be doubly sure. While that's coming out the back, just be sure that this maintains pressure and be sure you've still got brake fluid in there, so pump it up if you need to. So I've got a nice lot of clear fluid out there, so when the hose is in there, there's no bubbles, so there's no air in there. When I pull it out, there's just a nice stream of brake fluid, so this one is done. Do the bleed nipple back up, not too tight, just enough. And we do the same again on the other side. and depressurize the bleeder and take it all off. What I'll do is check that this is up to the maximum, and any brake fluid in here I'll throw away. Even though it's fresh, I'll throw it away because I always use brake fluid from a fresh sealed container because it absorbs water from the atmosphere. You get water in it, you haven't got any brakes. Adjust the handbrake, so 2 little 10mm nuts here, do up the one at the bottom and then tighten the top one down on top of it. So you really want sort of 3 or 4 maximum clicks on that, you don't want excess travel, and then tighten the nuts down. Put the wheels back on. Torque these up properly when it's back on the ground. I don't normally use a gun for these because sometimes it can actually exceed the recommended torque. I want to show you these tyres as well. So these were passing MOT all day long. They haven't got any cuts or tears. They're not damaged in any way really. Loads of tread on them, but basically they are old. So 2017 there. See the 17 at the last bit. And then we have all these little sort of cracks here on the edge. Don't like that at all, and the whole appearance of it is very shiny, and you're not going to get a lot of grip out of that. Although that would pass an MOT, I'm not going to be using that. I'm going to keep these on for a very slow drive to the garage, so I can set the tracking at the back, sort of maximum 30 mile an hour, and then after that, all of them will be changed. That's the same with this one here. Legal all day long, loads of tread, but old. So this one is 2016, and you can see all the little fine cracks here. Sort of heat cracks, I suppose. Not good enough for a tyre. Any problems with the tyre need to come off. Alright, it's a big moment. The jack stands are out. Let's put it back on the ground. That's the back done. There we go. So that's what we were playing with the other day. See, it's looking a bit like the Wild West DeLorean at the moment. So everything is still loose on there, and it's got to settle basically. So I'm going to put some weight in the back, move it around, maybe get in there, sort of, you know, put some real weight on there, and that should settle down to the proper height, and then we can start checking that design height that we were arsing around with the other day. Okay, welcome to the front of ST170 Restoration ST170. So here we go, we finally made it. So while I'm under here is I need to replace this section here. This is the bit that I had to cut out, the flexi section, to get the exhaust off. So I've got a new one of those, and to get that off I have to basically undo these nuts at the back here with an extension bar. Now they're looking at me, I'm looking at them, and to be honest I'm not sure who's going to win this, but I'm going to have a go and see if I can get that off without having to take too much apart. I do have to be very careful because it is connected to this piece here, which is the catalytic converter. Now these, I haven't looked it up, I would imagine that's around £700 for a genuine one, and I need to really not be damaging that. I know a lot of people, they do take them out and they put on a straight pipe. It sort of is illegal because it's not going to pass the MOT test. You're not going to meet the emissions test if you have no cat on there, and if you get stopped you might be liable for a fine. I think probably if I was going to do anything with a cat, I'd change it for a sports cat, which is a little bit bigger and a bit more free-flowing, and you would still meet the emissions. And also with regard to the engine, it is expecting to have some sort of resistance there. That's how it's been set up and tuned. All the sensors are expecting to have a catalytic converter there, and you can sometimes have issues, not all the time, but yeah, generally I would go for leaving the cat in place. Got the nuts warmed up with a blowtorch. While I'm waiting for those bolts to cool down, I'll just give a quick tour of the underside of the front. So I'm obviously going to change everything. Got these lovely big 300mm discs here. I'm going to go with standard brakes. I just really like the feel of the standard brakes in this car. They give loads of feedback. They're not too much, they're not too little, they're just very good for fast road, and that's just how I like them. And then we've got under here, see various lines here. They are in very bad condition. So the brake line is obviously corroded. I need to change that for copper ones. I'm not sure, I think there's a power steering. Yeah, one of those is power steering. I think it's power steering. I need to change that, or it might be clutch. And then we've got the suspension here. This is all going to be changed, the spring, the shock, everything. I'll do the wheel bearing in here, recondition all of this, all of the whole arm, all of the underneath. I'm probably going to get a new front subframe, or I'll take it away and I'll get it blasted and powder coated like I did with the back. so I'm not entirely sure what route I'll go down. May well change this mount here just as a precaution, nice and easy to do that. Notice here there's an oil leak from the drive shaft, so I'll be taking the drive shaft out and then changing the seal in that. I'll also change these gaiters as well. And yeah, we've got the lovely 6-speed gearbox here. This is a get rag gearbox for the ST170. Really nice gearbox, is really good for a really involved sort of B-road drive. And then the front here, we've got obviously the chassis rails here. They all seem to be in very good condition. I'm going to change the horn because the horn on this car is crap. I'm used to a really good van horn. That's no good at all on this one. I reckon water's probably got in and knackered it. And then through here we've got the obviously the radiator under here. I think somebody's previously done all the pipes and the hoses, but I may well do those again just for sort of to keep the quality uniform. I have already changed the sump on this car, so there is a new sump there. I'll just take you around this side, and there you see all the spiders because we haven't driven anywhere for a long time in this, so yeah, these all need to be changed. I'll do all the brake hoses, bleed everything out, basically do what I did to the back, make sure everything's properly sorted. And then we have the, just behind that cover there is the auxiliary drive belt. That's never been done actually, that needs to be changed. The cam belt was done, but I'm going to be inspecting that as well, just to make sure the guy that did it properly. We've got more crusty pipes down here, and yeah, just general sort of surface rust. That's the headlight leveler there, that is sort of taped on, so if I can't find one I'll have to just make sure that's working properly. Ideally I'd like to get a new one there. And yeah, it's just general sort of minor oil leaks and surface rust there. Just see through the front there. Yeah, so I will crack on with that. That's all coming up, and obviously I'm going to do the clutch as well, so it may well be that I just take all of this off, do the clutch, and then as I put it back together, recondition it all. I need a new heat shield here as well for the cat. So yeah, there's loads of bits to be doing, and we're going to do it all. Praise the Lord, it's a miracle. So if you're a mechanic or DIY or however you work on cars, this is the best thing you can do when there's a piece and it just, you look at it and you think there's no way that's going to come off, and it actually comes off without damaging it. My God, it's honestly the best result you can have there, because this is why I don't like messing with the exhaust, because everything's always completely corroded on, but I just can't believe that's come off and it hasn't even damaged the studs there, so very happy with that. Let's get the new piece back on, drop it back down to the ground, and let's start this car. That's the old one, and this is the one I'm going to put on, and also we've got a new gasket set as well. Take the old gasket off. Really, I'm so happy to get this flexi section off. That really wasn't easy. Basically I rounded the bolts off on there, and then I had to use a damage belt removal set, and then I sort of rounded that off, and I went one size smaller on the damage bolt removal set, and then it finally came off. And yeah, I was on this for an hour trying to get this off, and obviously I had to wait for the bolts to cool down, but yeah, I'm very, very pleased to get that off. And we have a nice new gasket, and then reattach the flexi section. I'm actually going to put a little dab of copper grease on those exhaust manifold studs, all of them, because it'll probably be me taking the bloody thing off again. There we go, perfect fit. Right, I'm going to have it tidy up, lower it back down to the ground, put the battery in, take off all the sun covers, and then I'm going to turn the key. Okay, moment of truth, going to start it up. Put the driver's seat back in so I can turn it round so I can do some work on the front. Going to get it started. I'm not going to be too concerned about any smoke coming from the actual exhaust, because that'll be the lacquer and various things burning off there. Maybe a little bit of smoke out the exhaust when I first start, because we do have fogging oil in there, but other than that I'm looking for sort of a nice smooth tick over. We're going to let it warm up, and yeah, just let it settle and run it for a bit. Okay, let's do this. There we go. Into neutral. Okay, everything's priming. Keeps on priming. There we go, that's finished. Right, let's turn the key. Perfect. And we're looking for the hazard lights here. We've got the oil pressure light has gone out. In the mirror there's no massive smoke. We have got a little bit of shaking, but I think it's just where it's not been run for a while. See, I'm not going to rev it, I'm just going to let it tick over because that oil needs to get around the engine. Yeah, sounds really good, the original exhaust. Love these things. It's got a very high idle because it's cold. It's now dropping down a bit. So it is chugging a little bit. This is only about 2 minutes in, and it's sort of a tiny little bit. I'd put that down maybe to the fact the battery's been disconnected for so long, and maybe the engine management is recalibrating, or could be something wrong with the HT leads, but it wasn't doing that when it was put away, and I haven't actually touched anything, so I'm guessing that will just sort itself out. Got really nice brake pressure, good brake feel, servo's working fine, so we know that all the work on the back of the brakes is okay. We've got no air trapped in there. Normal feel. So a few more minutes in, it's running much smoother now. The chugging is just almost detectable at idle, but hardly anything, so I reckon it just needs to be run. Okay, it's got a slight misfire. I'm just going to switch it off and then check all those HT leads in the coil. I'm just going to double check all of this, make sure all is well. That's the reason that I didn't touch anything else apart from what was in here, because if there is a problem when I first start it, I know that it's probably somewhere in here because yeah, nothing else has been touched. So there we go, great result. I'm really happy with that. It starts, it moves, I've turned it round, and yeah, really happy with that result. So what I'm going to do now is I need to do everything on the front. So in the same way that I did the back, I'm going to do the front, going to sort the clutch out, do everything on there, treat all the rust, and get that sorted. So basically at the moment there is a misfire. We're going to deal with that in the next episode. I'm not going to go into that now. Yeah, I have to get that sorted. I'm not going to run it anymore because when they are misfiring you can damage the cat, and I obviously don't want that. So we need to get that sorted. And yeah, basically at the moment how it stands, money-wise, this has had to do the back, and what you're seeing in the videos, been about £1,400. It's all listed down, yeah, about £1,400 to do that. With the labour, I'm running out, I'd probably say around 100 hours labour. I'm not keeping count of it, but the labour has been about 100 hours. And yeah, I would expect the same on the front. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. Loads more to come, and I'll see you for the next one.